Today we're talking about the nervous system. What is the study of the nervous system? Well, it's called neurology. It is a branch of science that deals with normal functioning and disorders of the nervous system. We have the functions. We have sensory, which sense internal and external changes. So for the internal, we look at blood pressure, how the heart is beating, blood glucose levels. And for external, it's what you touch. It is integrative, which means it analyzes information. It stores information and then decides what to do with it. We also have motor function, which means that we can actually respond to stimuli through our motor or motion. We have two types of neurons. We have afferent neurons, which actually neurons that bring information from our peripheral or outside nervous system to the central nervous system, which is our brain and our spinal cord. Then we have the opposite, which are motor or efferent neurons, which are effector neurons. And that's information carried from our central nervous system out to the peripheral nervous system, and it actually causes an effect. We see something occur. So, moving from our peripheral nervous system to our central nervous system is the effector nerve. Taking that information from the central nervous system and causing an effect is going to be our effector nerve. Our central nervous system versus our peripheral. Central is going to be our brain and spine. They're in the center of the body. Then we have our peripheral. These are going to be the nerves coming off of our brain stem and nerves coming off of our spinal cord. So the central nervous system, we have the brain that is housed within the skull, contains billions of neurons. We have our spinal cord, which has hundreds of millions of neurons, and it's connected directly to the brain, and it's protected by the bones or the vertebral column. It receives and correlates many different types of signals or sensory information. It's the source of thought, emotions, and memories. It is the source of most impulses that stimulate muscles and glands to secrete. Our peripheral nervous system is going to be our cranial nerves, which emerge from the base of our brain. Then we have our spinal nerves, which emerge from the spinal cord. They can be further divided into somatic nervous system or body nerves that are sensory nerves that convey information from the somatic receptors or the body receptors to our central nervous system. So it's taking from the peripheral and taking to the central. Somatic nerves are going to be our motor neurons in the central nervous system as well, that conduct impulses to our skeletal muscles. These guys are voluntary, which means you can choose to use them. Autonomic nervous system is the opposite. It's involuntary. You cannot choose to use it. It's sensory nerves that convey information from the autonomic sensors or the automatic sensors, receptors, to the central nervous system. These motor neurons then go from the central nervous system to things such as our smooth muscle, our cardiac muscle, and our glands that continue to go without us even thinking about it. Again, nervous system, central nervous system, brain and spinal cord, peripheral nervous system. We had autonomic, which is involuntary, which we'll see broken down into two more subdivisions, sympathetic and parasympathetic. And then we have our somatic nervous system, which is voluntary controls, talking about movement. We have autonomic, again, is involuntary, composed of sympathetic and parasympathetic, which we'll get to in a moment. It controls the heart, the GI tract, the glands, the hormones, and respiration. Those are things that you do not have to think about to have them occur. Somatic is going to be voluntary control, and specifically talking about our muscle cells, or our skeletal muscle cells. Now, talking about our autonomic nervous system, again, we can talk about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The sympathetic is going to be our flight or fight response. And we think about ease with that. This type of response occurs in exercise, emergencies, excitement, or embarrassment. Our parasympathetic nervous system, it occurs during rest and digest. We take the D's from digest. We have digestion, we have defecation, and we have diuresis, which is urination. These work together or compete with one another to maintain homeostasis. Neurophysiology. Let's take a look at the actual structure. Functional properties. Neurons have to be irritable. They have to be able to pick up impulses and from stimuli. They're conductive. They transmit nerve impulses from one to another, and then even to each muscle cells or glands. They occur at the synapse where the neurotransmitters diffuse and bind to chemical receptors, or chemoreceptors. Now, neurons are able to be altered, controlled, or destroyed. They can actually be blocked, causing the membrane to be impermeable. This can occur with cold, pressure, sedative, anesthetic, or your limbs falling asleep. The neuron has three main structures. It has the cell body that has dendrites, or sensory receptors, on that end. Then we have a long axon. The axon ends in the terminal axons that will then send messages to the next cell. Around, we see a Schwann cell, which is a myelin sheath around our axon. Again, the myelin sheaths form as we get older, so it's from infancy all the way to adulthood, so y'all are still forming. And it helps protect, insulate, and increase the speed of the nerve impulses. In between the myelin sheath, you see little pieces that don't have any myelin. These are the nodes of Ranvier. These nodes are where we see the action potential and things occur and propagate, which means continue. I told you that polarization means a changing in the positives and negatives. So, if we have a membrane at rest here, it has all the positives on the outside and it's negative on the inside. So with the stimulus, we cause one of the positives to go inside. Well, this will cause a cascade effect, or known as a propagation of polarization, or depolarization. So more and more positives come inside, pushing the negatives outside, and it continues through this unmyelated fiber. Repolarization is when the positives are pushed back out and everything goes back to the way it was. Again, it propagates and occurs where it's unmyelated. So we have our positives moved inside, and they continue down. We pulled more positives inside. Then we pulled more positives inside. And this would continue to pull the positives on those unmyelated portions. Basic definition. Nerve is a bundle containing hundreds of thousands of axons plus their associated connective tissue and blood vessels. Mixed nerves contain axons of both sensory and motor neurons. A ganglia is a small cluster of neuronal cell bodies that are located outside of the brain and spinal cord. Now, we talk about these a lot in smaller organisms, such as insects. Insects have a main brain in the head, but may have several ganglion that control other portions of the body elsewhere, such as lower in their abdomen. These ganglion can control other portions of the body, not just the one brain that is in their head. Integrative functions. Both central nervous system and peripheral nervous system come together to analyze and store information. They then make decisions regarding appropriate responses to the sensory information. Well, that's all I can cram in today. Bye for now.